Should be at undo business further down.
Okay. I didn't scroll all the way down. Huh?
Yep.
All right. Summary of non-public actions from January 9th, 2019. Mr. Myers made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of December 19th, 2018. Mrs. Harrison second. Motion carried 5-0. Mrs. Hertzberger made a motion to accept the resignation of Katrina Reed, part-time CHS art teacher. Mrs. Harrison second. Motion carried 5-0. All right. So at this time, we have, actually there's only one in the audience this evening. We have a recipient of excellence in education, empowering excellence in education. And this evening's award goes to Jill Pennington.
Yay.
So, just a little bit about Jill is a vocalist, actress, teacher, pianist, accompanist, choreographer, who has been a music teacher at CHS and currently LMS for many years. She works with the theater groups around the state. She is a recent recipient of the New Hampshire Band Directors Association Band Director of the Year, former LEA president, current vice president of New Hampshire NEA. Jill has worked tirelessly to provide a quality music program to the district and then coordinated outstanding production performances in the music and theater departments. So I'd like to say congratulations and present this to you. One. I don't want to take a picture too. There's a pin that accompanies this, but unfortunately it was left behind.
I know where you work.
So, congratulations. Take a picture.
Awesome. I took 3. I'll send it to you.
All right.
And I'll send it to you right
Yes,
now.
send it to me.
I'm sorry to hold six on it.
Oh, go.
Feels better.
Mm.
I'm sure. It's the
Eventually.
Thing, it's the thing everybody has.
All right.
Stay healthy.
Thank you.
That's right. So next we have correspondence.
I don't believe I received any correspondence.
So that'll bring us to superintendent comments.
So a couple of follow-up pieces for the board. So the sophomore project and the senior project links are provided for you. And I think they were posted earlier, so I don't know if you've been able to look at those, but let's just quickly take a look. I want to make sure we're getting you exactly what you're asking for. So if you click on the link to the sophomore project, it opens up to a PDF that I then have to hit the big plus button so I can actually read this thing. And so essentially, we've not provided student names. We don't want to get into
No.
any kind of
And we don't need any
student
names.
name piece, right? But what you have here are the contact person. You have the topic, and there's been kind of an expansion just to make sure that the information is, at least it's not a 2-word topic, right? So it should give you a little bit more depth in terms of what the project is. And so these are the sophomore projects for you.
I think the only piece that I'd still like to see is, 'cause- unless that's what these are.
Oh, my goodness.
Maybe I'm wrong here. So the dates on the right-hand column, the approved dates. So what I was looking for also is the dates that they're going to be completed,
So
or when they're going to be, I'm sorry, when they're going to be accomplished.
I think March.
Well, not the end date, but I mean, there's someone doing it like September to January,
Oh.
kind of thing. I'm just wondering what the time frame is that they're doing the project.
They have to ask for permission prior to the ending of the school year. I know that my son did his over the summer at the food bank, that he had to get permission to do it because I didn't want it to interrupt his school year.
Right,
So,
because
yeah.
a lot of these just have dates of like June. So I'm taking it that's when they were approved.
Yes.
That's what I'm assuming anyway.
I'm going to assume that also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's in clearinghouse. Yep.
Because then when you go a little further, some that are in September.
So for example, I'm looking at one that says piano accompaniment for the LMS course. So when did that occur? Like when is
Or
that
when is
fall
it going
year,
to, like,
or-
right, is
Yep.
it one day, is it like?
Yep.
Just dates of service, I guess, is really what we're looking for. And then we can go through them afterwards.
Yep, that's good. Anything else on the sophomore project? I'm going to click on the link to
No.
senior next. And in the case of senior project, I want to make sure that I'm looking at it correctly. Here you see, again, the project name, and they went back in and sort of expanded that. So they added some more notes in to make sure that it would not be just something very brief. And also who the advisor is. I think that's the advisory.
Right.
The
Then-
mentor, that tells you a little bit more about who it is
Yep.
that they are working with and the fact that they've been approved. There are a couple you can see that are still pending.
So again, in this, what I'd like to see is what period of time that this project is going to take place.
Yep.
There's a lot more description to the sophomore project than there is to the senior projects. But I think like once we digest these and look at them, that it, I think one of our first meetings after the budget process, then we can start like going through this a little bit more and like looking at it.
Would you want the advisors, the people who are in charge of the senior projects, to come in and talk about it?
I think we will have a discussion first as far as, once we go through the information and get a little bit more information, I think then we can have a discussion and then probably, go from there, like what we want to do.
And this is, as I've said to the board before, this is on my radar, it's on Mary's radar, it's on Bill's radar. We are taking a look at some of the PD funds that we have available and are planning as part of our summer curriculum work to be sure that these two projects are touched and that the people overseeing this are involved in that. So, the more feedback we get, the better we can do that piece. So that's helpful.
I guess one thing I'd like to bring up, just having been through it twice, for such a big project, especially for the senior project, it's pretty limited for the instructions available for this. Like, I know they have a classroom page, but the students have access to, parents don't follow it, but it is a fairly limited block of instructions for it, for as big as it is. So,
Yep.
and I know it's run into problems in the past, the process for making sure you're on the right page, maybe just a little more of a, if I'm not mistaken, I think the only instruction was that one sheet rubric on the CHS webpage.
They all have it on their Google Classroom. I
They
guess
do, but
my
I'm just saying with the problems they ran into last year, which were pretty large.
I think
believe.
last year was an anomaly because of Dr. Angie's
Yeah,
passing.
which it was, but they still,
I have a question why there are 14 teacher assistants. What does a teacher assistant do in a class?
There are a lot of them like that that are pretty vague as far as description.
Like, I understand being a teacher assistant in Mrs. Adamakis's room or maybe a first grade classroom. I don't know. I think it's
Yeah,
going to
I
be
think-
up for discussion anyway, from what I'm hearing from the senior teacher advisors.
but to get back to the instructions, I know last year there was a big problem because they switched out was submitted. And unless they switch back this year, they still have the old instruction sheet as the link online where it says give to your advisor, which I believe is supposed to be electronically submitted now.
Yeah.
So,
I'd have to-
just
I'd have to look at that.
inconsistencies should be looked at.
Yep. So I think it's helpful if board members, dig into this a little bit and if you see specific things, and then we'll make sure that we get this feedback
Yep.
as we look at the overall.
You want to back up now since Kara's here?
Yep.
So we'll just backtrack a little bit here, since Kara has now joined us.
I'm sorry.
That's quite all right.
Oh,
Sorry.
Blame it on traffic. But again, we have another recipient of the Empowering Excellence in Education Award with us this evening, Kara Gannon. And Kara has led the Athletic Boosters, chaired the Press Box Fundraising Committee, and has been an active supporter of athletic programs at CHS for some time, quite some time. Her strong, determined, and continued commitment to the students of our school reflects her devotion to our district. And to that, we applaud you and thank you. So thank you very much.
I give you a hug too if you want.
Thank you. You? Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh my God, she's so cute. No comment.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm trying to get him to cry early.
Thank you.
I know.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Tara, if you ever make it up to CHS, if you're ever in the vicinity of the SAU office, pop in. I'll give you the pin that goes with that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a nice night.
Thanks. Good night.
Hi, Bob. Oh, I just love it.
Look at that. I think a good time for us to look at the sophomore and senior project as a whole. Just, digest what's here. If you have any questions, we'll do that after we do the budget process. I think we can dive into this a bit.
Perfect. And I think the other piece too is I'm anxious or looking forward to seeing the senior project day, the presentations, because, a lot of it will really help to see that in action. And I think, the more board and community involvement in that can really help us kind of restructure what do we want to do with this. Good. All right. So SNAP fundraiser. So the SNAP fundraiser is one that went out right before, I'm trying to remember, this was before the holiday, I believe. And so we did a little bit of digging in, taking a look at it. And I want to make sure that we bring the athletic director here so that he can also be a part of the dialogue relative to this. But essentially the information that we have right now is that the basketball teams and wrestling are raising funds. And these are for equipment items above and beyond normal budget items. So for example, the Dr. Dish shooting machine, food for team dinners or team building activities, warm-ups, team shirts, team pullovers, and then enhanced film breakdown and stats program. So these are some of the things that they're actually doing this for. I reiterated the point with the high school that students need to know that. They need to be able to say, this is the thing that we're working toward. It's important that, if somebody in the community says, what are you fundraising for? It can't be the team. It needs to be the following purpose. So we're continuing to work on getting that message out.
Can I just add one thing to it?
Please.
One of the items is fundraising for team dinners.
Mhm.
So for all my years, and Rob, I'm sure you've been involved with some of them, it's always been the kids themselves.
Mhm.
If it's a team dinner, I'm sure wrestling was the same way. They each chip in $5, $6. So it was never really anything they fundraise for.
No, the parents usually bring everything.
Parents put it
Yeah,
on.
Team
or they
dinners.
get,
Go to
like I
someone's
said,
house,
X amount of
yeah.
dollars from each of the players, and
Right.
they all
Well,
contribute.
football, you do the breakfasts.
Mhm.
That was out of fundraising.
Yeah, the
Right.
banners bring in a tremendous amount of money, those
Yeah.
banners. But even, I know boys basketball had a spaghetti dinner. They had it at a family's house. They had spaghetti and someone brought a case of water. It was no big whoop.
I mean, generally when they fundraise, it would be for like warm-up jerseys, that type of
Right.
thing. If they're looking for equipment, then equipment.
What's a
Again, they can
doctor-
fundraise for anything they want, but I mean, it's
What's a
just,
Dr. Dish shooting machine?
Apparently let's look
It
it
sounds
up.
like a lot of fun.
Sounds expensive. Let's see.
yeah, it has something to do with basketball.
I'm going to Google it.
I am
do
right
that.
now.
And you, because I don't honestly know.
Then you can let us know.
Shooting machine.
Sounds like a game from the 70s.
Ooh, look at that. It's not that much money unless they want the spectacular one.
So the other piece, and it allowed us to engage in a dialogue about SNAP, because if you look at the agreement that we gave you a copy of, but between service fees and so forth, we were really questioning, are we getting a bang for the buck on this type of fundraiser? So there's a certain amount of ease that goes with it, but there's also kind of an overhead that we scratch our heads a little bit around. So it certainly opened our eyes to, is this what we want to continue to do? Is this the right fundraiser to be doing? So when Jerry comes, I think the overall conversation about fundraisers and where does this fit in is a good one. The benefits are that there isn't the door-to-door piece. There's no need for students to actually handle money. Everything's done electronically and so forth. But I think some of the negatives that you can see when you look at the group keeps 77% of the funds raised as long as 70% participation is achieved. Otherwise, it's 70%. So 30 cents on the dollar goes to the organization. And, is that really where we want to land on it? So I don't know if the
So-
board has other questions or things that I can help frame this for the next meeting and next discussion.
I think we'll wait until he's here. I mean, because the thing that's different between this one and other fundraisers, I think the percentage that they're getting is higher than they would if they sold those cards. But the thing is, you're not getting anything for your contribution, so it's just a straight cash contribution rather than a donation or, purchasing like the coupons or whatever it is.
And, it's similar to Raise Craze in that it's all done on an online platform. I don't know if you've heard about Raise Grace. It's the one that GMS does.
GMS,
They
right.
kept 90% of the proceeds. And in Raise Craze, you don't really get anything. You don't get something tangible for your donation, but it is tax deductible. And the student and their families are sending out the emails. It's not collecting emails and then giving them to a third party to then contact those people. So I don't see anything in the contract that says anything about sharing of
Not sharing.
personal data or anything like that. That kind of concerns me.
Well, Michelle, make sure I have this right, but there's a term of service that's deeper than this one pager.
Okay, so there's probably in that
I
agreement
gave it to
somewhere.
him. It's
Okay.
very big, and there were I highlighted some things that I thought might be questionable for the superintendent to look into. So
And where did you find that, Michelle? Is it in this
On
agreement?
the
It
SNAP
references
site.
on the SNAP site.
if you go to the
Right.
bottom, it says terms of service. And
Yeah.
I always look at those.
And it was written by a team of lawyers. And
Sure it was.
the idea that, in perpetuity, you are giving up info.
Mhm.
And so I think that's another thing that has this sort of crossing our desk saying, let's look at it.
Right. Yeah.
All right, good on that for now. And we'll work on Jared and just some of the bigger pieces.
Okay.
All right, so let me shift to calendar discussion. So, and I really want feedback and to engage in a dialogue about this. So, a couple of things. The calendars from other school districts are being developed. So we have the Pinkerton, and the Alvern calendars at this point. So we know what that looks like. I just want to share with the board, it was mentioned last time, the Bow calendar. And I have a copy of last year's Bow calendar, and it was a 180-day calendar. So they had the full 180 days that were scheduled out. In looking at this, there are basically two that are being presented because we were able to negotiate some language change relative to the start of school that would allow us to start before Labor Day every year. And that's why you have one that says, this is the calendar if the contract is approved, because then the new language would go into play and we can actually start before Labor Day, even when Labor Day is later, like it is this year coming up. Or if it doesn't approve, then we have to go with existing contract language. And existing contract language would force us to start after Labor Day, given the scenario. So which one does the board want to kind of talk about and explore first? Because getting a handle on them, because it's all dependent on what the voters do.
No, we'll just start with if it passes. We'll just start with
If
that
it
one.
passes. All right. So let's start with if it passes. So if it passes, we're able to begin no more than 5 calendar days before Labor Day. And that's why you can see that there's an August 28th start date. I happen to believe that given the fact that we have such high sports participation and the number of families who are sort of engaged in school at that point, because
Right.
athletics are starting on August, 12th or so for football and then soccer and the other sports. So I think many of our parents are already engaged and are committed to being here. So we're then proposing that we would start on August 28th, which is what the contract would allow. The 4 days that are marked before that are our teacher workshop days. And we've got a little bit of flexibility. We're still brainstorming how we want to best utilize that time. And one of those days is new teacher orientation. And then the other 3 days right now are teacher workshop days. One of those days is for teachers to work in their classroom. And we're thinking that we could give a little bit more flexibility and say that day could occur anytime this week. We're not going to pinpoint when it is for everybody. Say sometime this week you need to come in and work in your classroom, sign in, let your administrators know that you're there. The other 2 days are more specific driven PD days that we would have. One thing that we don't have included in this is the Friday of Labor Day weekend. So if we can start 5 days before, we really see 3 days being necessary. You wouldn't want to do Wednesday, Thursday, and then take a 4 day weekend. So it's sort of like, if we're going to get going, let's have the 3 days and the 3 day Labor Day weekend. Going into November, another piece that we've examined is taking the full week off and looking for board input on the Thanksgiving week. The problem is that we're making an effort to put the quarters on the calendar. So you'll notice that Halloween Day, the 31st, is the end of quarter one. That's the 45th day. So to hold off until November 25th or 26th to then have parent-teacher conferences feels too late, too long. So in this case, we put it on November 12th because that's the election day. And so it would allow us not to have school, avoid the whole conflict piece with voters and parking and everything that happens at the high school. So that could be, and it goes up against Veterans Day. So it allows us to have that parent-teacher conference a little bit closer to the end of the quarter.
Can I ask you a question? In your old districts, were conferences just 1 day? I know where I am, we have 2 days. How about you, Rob?
We have 2, but it's one school day and one night. So
That we have,
it's like 1 day.
we have 2 evenings, yeah. I was just curious, because I can't usually go. Okay, just curious.
Yeah, we could examine that. And I want to look at the contract language a little more closely. I mean, it does say 1 day for parent-teacher conferences. Does that mean you can split it into 2 halves, or can it be 2 evenings as opposed to, all of that I think is.
I think the problem has always been the middle school, because it's like a lottery system to get in. I mean, I don't want to take the day off to do a parent-teacher conference, but for the most part, teachers are flexible to do it another day or call on the phone. I was just curious.
Yeah, they've always been really
Accommodating.
accommodating if we couldn't get a slot or I needed more time than the 10-minute slot that we got.
Just a few other quick features on this calendar. You can see December, because Christmas Day is on a Wednesday, therefore New Year's is on a Wednesday. We're scheduling right now to come back on Thursday, Friday, and not to take the full 2 weeks off. This would normally be the calendar that sort of forces a 2-week vacation because the holidays are in the middle of the week. I'm banking on parents are ready to get their kids back to school after the second. And so, we'll see if we get feedback on that, but that's the way we've scheduled this. We then have the quarter ending, the semester ending on the 22nd. And then right now, January 28th is scheduled as a teacher workshop day. That's also the New Hampshire primary date. If the Secretary of State decides that we're going to have the New Hampshire primary, he always holds his cards close and then announces it, right? And so we would be prepared to move that to whenever that is, again, to accommodate the voting at the high school. And it gives us our final PD day sort of in the middle of the year. So I don't think they're as effective when they're held off a lot later, but this allows us an opportunity to have one there. Actually, that's not accurate, because if you look at March, you'll see that March 10th, which is the other voting day. So the theme is the 3 voting days are factored in with parent-teacher conferences and teacher workshop days. Quarter 3 then ends in April, and this has us ending. You'll notice that June 8th is the 175th day, and June 15th is the 180th day.
We also don't see any late arrivals.
And we are not currently scheduling late arrival days. The general feedback that we've heard is that they're too disruptive to parents and to families. The other thing is that because our 3 start times are so staggered, because we have 3 bus routes, so we have 3 very staggered times, they really are not allowing us the opportunity for any sort of cross grade level, cross disciplinary. I mean, they're isolated to just building based days, and it's not letting us get after the work that we want to get after. And so that's a challenge. Now, the reason I marked the 175th day and the 180th is that I know there's been discussion in the community about an hours-based calendar. So we have to go back and redo the math. I don't have the answer for you as to exactly what day meets the hour requirement. I know in the past that there's been a sense that one school in particular is limiting our ability to take advantage of that. But whatever the day is, I would be proposing to the board in the future, and I'm seeking feedback on this, that we would not make up the first couple of snow days if we can meet the hours day. So not make those up with students, make them up with staff. They still need to work the day. And I think that we would be able to gain back some of that cross-disciplinary learning and curriculum work that we really need to be able to get after that's not being met. I mean, I think the best we could do is to schedule these late arrivals, but it's not meeting the need. I think we can get after it with a full day with staff. We have to be cognizant of the language in the contract, right? So they're not PD days. We can't schedule a professional development speaker or a professional learning piece. However, we could do curriculum work and PLC work in that time. I think there's some flexibility. We still need to work with LEA to figure out what that would look like.
Has LEA had any input?
LEA
into
has
this?
not seen this. This is literally hot off the press. We have work to do with LEA.
I just think it's going to be a long conversation to have with them as far as not having students in front of them and what they do, because that was an argument with them in the past. Because they didn't want development. So it's whether or not they will work on curriculum or not. Because in the contract is 180 days of education and 5, whatever it is, of personal development.
Right. Yeah, and I think, what we're trying to do is to get some flexibility with not going late into June. But in order to have that flexibility, they still need to work the 180 days. Those aren't going to be free days off. So how do we
That's what
find?
and that's what they wanted last time.
And I think there's
Well,
an
and-
opportunity.
I mean, it's
for us to
beneficial to
find-
them. I would think that they'd,
There is work to be done. I mean,
And they recognize it.
Yeah.
They acknowledge that there's not enough time to get after everything that needs to be done. So
right.
I think from the teacher point of view, the way I've understood it is that when a district sponsored PD, that everybody attends, and maybe not everybody needs to hear that message. And so that does cause some resentment with, I'm sitting here when I already know this, or I already attended something. So I think we've got to find a way to acknowledge that piece and get a kind of a happy medium on it. And if you look at the other calendar, if
So-
there is no
Sorry,
contract, yeah.
just stay on the first one.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like bouncing my head as far as the whole Thanksgiving week.
Yeah.
It's been nice for the kids to have it off, and I'm not sure if it's more of a hardship for parents for the entire week or not.
I've heard kind of mixed reviews.
Yeah.
I love having the week off. And my husband usually takes that week off, and that's kind of like it's a family togetherness week. I wonder though if participation in the parent conferences has gone down because maybe people are heading out of town for the week, or they're getting a jump on Thanksgiving. And I've also heard from some parents that it's really hard to get the full week off. They can get the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but that Monday and Tuesday they really have to work. So I'm not opposed to going back to the 3 days off.
I just don't like that you have 2 weeks and 2 out of 3 weeks are like broken up.
I think it's fabulous.
I think it's better than it was because we had a day off for teacher conferences. We had a day off for the election. There was something else in there and we had the 3 days for Thanksgiving. So I think lumping the conference day with Veterans Day and having those 2 days off. But then I also worry too, are people not going to go to conferences because that's another day off? It's a 4-day weekend. But I don't I think having 2 full weeks in November is a good thing. We always want more full weeks, but
Then the question is, do you need 2 days for conferences?
well, this is only
That's one day.
this is only one day
That's right.
It's a holiday.
because they got
Yeah,
that day
I'm sorry.
holiday off.
Is there any benefit, Mike, to going to parent-teacher conferences on a Friday to have 2 4-day weeks? That'd be the only question I have instead of a real
Oh, like
short
the
week.
8th?
Just, I'm just throwing that.
Yeah, I hit the 12th because of the elections.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh, right.
The concern we've had was,
Yeah.
so next year is the tough year because you have see if I got this right. You've got the election day in November. You've got the New Hampshire primary in January. You've got so you have the presidential primary in January. You have the New Hampshire primary in September. And then you have the election day,
Will there be an election?
the
in November?
following November.
No,
So
The 19th, will there be a November election?
Isn't it November when we can't?
Are you talking about 2020?
2019?
2019, what will be, there actually, that may be a non-election day.
I
There
don't
may
think
not be
because
anything on the
there's
ballot.
no House or Senate elections.
What?
Do we have state elections if there's not federal elections? I don't think we do, right?
Which election day is November 12th?
That's usually the federal.
Yeah, that may actually be the
You mean
year that
general election?
doesn't go.
For
General
president?
election.
No, 19, I don't think there's anything else.
No, so there wouldn't be. 2020,
2020 will be-
February would be the primary, the
Yeah,
federal, presidential primary. March would be election day here. September would be state
State.
primary. November would be
Federal,
presidential
yeah.
general election.
So Rob, I think you're accurate. I think November 12th of 2019 is actually not an election day. It's, quote, the second Tuesday, but there's nothing to vote on. So we could move that to the 8th.
And I'm not saying, I'm proposing, I just wonder if that would make it easier for teachers to have 2 4-day weeks rather than a 3.
Please, I'm gonna be here on my
So they'd be off the 8th and the 11th.
Sidebar.
We could move that up. Yeah.
Not for-
That's my birthday
whatever you-
weekend, so
And I expect a cake here on February 20th for my birthday. It's half a century, people.
so noted.
Any other thoughts on this calendar?
I guess it's probably not a popular thing if we needed to, where we're technology based now with Google Classroom. Is there consideration or have been any discussion to relook at Blizzard bags if we need help out of it or not?
Well, there wouldn't be blizzard bags. And I've had the conversation
About
with Mike that, I mean, there are schools out there right now that's what they do. If there's a snow day.
Yeah.
Then what they do is, I'll use Bishop Girton.
Mhm.
What they do is they notify the student by 9 o'clock in the morning. Here's what your responsibilities are. They have to check in with the teacher like 3 times a day, and the teacher's available the entire day.
that's what we're doing the same. And I just wanted
In a middle
There's
school,
absolutely no
you're
reason
doing
why we
that too?
can't.
we're
I
doing
think
that
that's
now.
fabulous.
There's no reason why we can't have live classrooms
No.
on a snow day.
I love
There's really
that.
not.
But just to bring, I know they weren't the stuff thrown at me. I know they weren't popular the first time we did Blizzard bags in the district because,
The blizzard bag, as a blizzard bag was, is no, it's not going to come back.
but it just seems there's
But
an
utilizing,
opportunity.
utilizing,
Won't that have to be in the contract though?
Right, we didn't,
no, that would have to be a sidebar with the contract. You'd still have to have discussion with
did
it.
we
Well,
take that language out or
nope,
did it just
the-
remain?
There's blizzard bag language in there. And I think the other thing is that's feeling more like an instructional day, the way it's in the contract.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that we have the flexibility.
We'd have to figure out how we would have elementary school kids participate.
Same way.
And I think there's a window too for the
Half of Litchfield loses their
So-
electricity during a snowstorm.
After what?
Hillcrest loses their electricity, that whole street, that whole area.
No, we haven't lost power for a while.
But usually during blizzard bags, they had 3 days to complete the assignment, so it isn't,
So kindergarten, if you needed to, they could actually.
Right, but the way it's set up right now, like where schools do it, it's due that day. Unless, of course, you have no power and you call in or do
Right.
something, but I mean, at 9 o'clock in the morning is when you get your assignment. And
That's
here
awesome.
comes your school day. You don't have to worry about,
Driving to
driving
school.
in the
Yeah,
snow or anything
that's
else.
great.
You don't have to worry about another snow day at the end of the year. Here's your assignment. And the other thing with BG, they don't supply a Chromebook. You're on your own. Get a laptop, get a computer, find your own device. We've at least supplied everyone from 5th grade on with a Chromebook. Let's utilize them.
I
That's my
agree.
feeling. And we should start doing that this year. But real classroom. I mean, here's your assignment. It's not something that, we put together in September for February.
I had a question about PSAT early release day.
Mhm.
So my daughter took the PSATs. She's in 9th grade, so she did the 8-9 this year, and then came home at 12:30. Why? Why are they coming home at? Why the early release?
On that day.
Yeah.
So what happened on that day is that every teacher in the school
Mhm.
was engaged in the administration of the PSAT. So nobody had any planning time throughout the day.
Uh-huh.
So the day ends at 12:30, and every teacher then had the guaranteed planning time in the contract in that last chunk of time. So in other words, in order to make it work, you've got to get these groups as small as possible, and that
Yeah.
was the way to get the teachers the planning time.
Better question is like midterms. Why are they done at 9:45?
Mhm.
I thought they went till noon or
They do, but if
12:30.
you only have one class,
Yeah.
then 9:45 you're done.
Or you, yeah.
That's a good question. I don't.
Yeah, I just.
How long do you think they should be? Why do you think, one exam is it gets over at 9:45. Do you think they should stay till 12? Or all day? No, I'm just curious.
I don't know what happens. I mean, it's,
Well, they're required to be there
For that
whether
one period.
for whatever.
So
Maddie.
if Bailey
don't-
has a study B period, she gets to go home.
Right. So yeah.
I don't understand what your question
well,
is.
it's a short day for the student.
Yeah.
What is it for the teacher? That's what I'm saying.
They stay and correct tests, I believe.
Yeah, the teachers are
There
there
the whole
all
day.
day. So, because I think if I understand the schedule right, they're giving 2 exams. And then they're being dismissed. So the teachers have that opportunity to do the grading of those.
How's that? Oh.
You're good too.
They don't because it's a Scantron. Is that right?
There's only like 2 Scantron machines. They're correct.
Yeah, and many are, but not all are. So,
And
yes.
some are catching up on their grading, I believe, like essays and stuff like that.
And if I can just switch before we shift to our guest, but the other calendar is essentially if the contract doesn't pass. So I think it's important that we understand a few things. That means we will be starting the Tuesday after Labor Day based on the current contract language. You can pretty much follow a similar flow. It bumps back all the quarters in terms of when they end. We retained, because then the quarter in November goes back to the 5th. So we retained the conferences of the the Thanksgiving week. Let's see if I got everything else right in here. Everything else is identical, and it pushes us back to the 180th day goes to June 18th. So it really kind of bumps us back a little bit later. I mean, we pick up basically 3 more days at the end of the year because they're not at the front loaded in the calendar.
Then you go back to full week in November.
Yes, because of the quarter just ends that much later, so it just gives us that time.
Yep.
So you can see it's still a work in progress. I think the feedback here is helpful. We're going to keep at it. We've got to have the conversation with LEA next. And if the board hears from anybody in the community who's watching tonight and has thoughts on it, that would be
Love to hear.
good input for us. And then we'll get this calendar finished and out as soon as we can, because I think families are really asking to be able to make plans for next year, and they just want to know what the school calendar looks like. So
Are these going to be posted? I know they're just drafts right now, but could you just ask as far as public input or feedback?
we could certainly get some feedback on it. Yeah.
I'm thinking just post them as a draft.
I'm hesitant. My hesitancy is the confusion over the two drafts and the,
Right.
if the contract passes, here's what it looks like. If it doesn't pass, this is what it looks like. But we can try to make that as clear as we can.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Make them two different colors.
Yeah. And
I mean,
I think people who are, looking at the teacher contract question just need to know that we have some language. I mean, this isn't just all about money. There was some
Right.
contract language that we negotiated.
do you want to get feedback from LEA before?
Definitely, before
Okay.
we go to the,
Yeah.
yes. And that may fine tune this a little bit more before we put it out, but we'll get to a point of the feedback piece.
I think if you put it out, like maybe putting it on one page, or description, first calendars, contract text, instead of having two different links, just to.
Yeah,
Because I think the links are, like I said, I think it's
I
pretty
know, but just-
self-explanatory. It's like, if the contract passes, the contract doesn't pass.
You mean one link?
One link with.
I don't know how if I got this on one page, I couldn't read it.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
2 pages is what I'm saying.
But
But
in
on
one
one
link.
link, I just think that
That
might
is
make it.
doable.
Yeah.
That's doable. Yep,
Cool, cool.
perfect. So I've got a couple other items, but I think we should honor
That's what I
our
was gonna
guest.
All right, so we're just gonna skip ahead right here and due to time and welcome Senator Susie to the school board meeting.
Thank
Thank you very much for coming.
Appreciate the opportunity to meet with all of you this evening.
We had the representatives, our representatives at the last meeting. And really the conversation is just where funding is going down. And the responsibility is more on the towns than the cities. And it seems like that's a trend and that's the way the trend's going to continue going. But it gets harder and harder, especially a small town like this with very little industry, that it's taxing and just keeps going up. I just wonder if you could shed some light. Is there any light?
We're hoping for light.
Sure. Well, let me first start by saying, Donna Susie, I'm serving my 4th term in the state Senate. I was recently elected Senate President. And prior to serving in the state Senate, I did serve nearly 4 terms on the Manchester School Board. So I thank and compliment and praise all of you because I know how difficult your jobs are. And in recent years, I think they have been made more difficult by some of the funding issues that have been thrust upon you as a result of some of the state action. Having said that, I do think there is the opportunity this session, I'm hopeful, for you to see some relief. We haven't seen the governor's budget proposal. That's going to be coming to us on February 14th. And as we joke, we like to think the governor will have a heart and present a budget that is fitting for Valentine's Day. But in all seriousness, there are some pieces of legislation that are looking at, there are a few different things that have been happening. The stabilization grants and building aid, I think, are one part of it. The other part of it has been the state's contribution to retirement and retirement costs. I will tell you that I think on the retirement side, 2 things. One, I do think that we've actually reached a peak with respect to those rates because what we were doing was paying back an unpaid balance. So I think, although not in this round, but I think within the coming years, you're actually going to see a decline in the rate because we will be paying off the unfunded liability and looking at what is the actual pension cost, which is less. There's also a piece of legislation, it's in the House, and I think a number of members of the Senate support it, to attempt to restore a portion of the state's contribution. 2 bad things happened at the same time. One, the local share went up to cover the unfunded liability. And at the same time, because of the recession, the state pulled what had traditionally been its share for decades. It had gone down and it went down to nothing. It went from 35 to 30 to 25 and then went to nothing at all that the state contributes. So there is an effort to restore a portion of the state's share on the retirement side. So I think that could help a bit, both on the school board side and also on the town side. The other things are a little more complicated. There is a piece of legislation in the Senate, Senator David Waters has sponsored, that would switch the revenue from Keno from funding full-day kindergarten, which I know Litchfield has embraced, and I think that's wonderful. I think that's great for the community. It would switch that revenue, that would continue to provide for revenue for towns that switch to full-time kindergarten, that additional revenue, but it would just come out of the education trust. And the Keno funds would actually be used for school building aid so that we could supplement more in this coming cycle. The needs are continuing to increase. You know, there were a few communities that did benefit from some state grants to upgrade security in various facilities, but it really isn't enough. There are a lot of other communities that are looking at closures, and I'm glad that's not the case here. You know, Campbell High School and certainly the middle and elementary school, I think, are in decent shape. And I have to commend you, because having attended the graduation ceremony last year at Campbell, the number of students that are either Wayland Parker scholars that are going to very prestigious higher institutions. There's a lot of amazing the student athletes that are certainly exceptional. There are a lot of amazing things ongoing at Campbell, and the work that you do, understanding the pressures you're under, and the work that the educators do is really, really extraordinary. And I want to compliment you on that. But I can tell you, until we see the governor's budget, there is certainly a willingness and a desire to do something, both on the retirement side, but also on the general property relief side, to try to help local communities that have been through a lot in the past few years.
So we understand that Bill 193 right now is kind of like at a standstill.
Mhm.
But there's another bill, 489,
Okay.
and it's educational hardship.
Yes.
And I bring that up because, as I did to the representatives, because we were hit with that, where we have a student who lives here in town,
Mhm.
and the state school board, we went and presented to the state school board, and we lost the case, and they told us that we are responsible for paying this child's tuition to Pinkerton for the next 2 years. So one child, that's accept, we can absorb that. But the concern is that this is going to become more widespread, that someone's going to say, well, they have courses there that we don't have. And it'll be, I want to get into this school. And that was one of her arguments, was that she wanted to get into an Ivy League school. So she felt that the courses we offered in comparison to Pinkerton wasn't sufficient. So that's why she wanted to continue going to Pinkerton.
Yeah, so starting with Senate Bill 193, and I think 489 to an extent, I oppose that legislation for the primary reason that, I think what happened with the Manchester high schools is a good illustration. Many of the surrounding communities, not Litchfield, but others, used to send high school students to Manchester West, Central, Memorial. And over time, all of them have made other choices. Manchester still has 3 high schools. Actually, we have 4. Manchester School of Technology is an actual full-service high school. The students that left, the revenues attributable to each student went with them, but the infrastructure costs remain the same.
Right.
And I think that's the scary part about Senate Bill 193 that many of us recognize. Although, you say it's 1 or 2 students from a few classrooms, it's not a big deal. You still need a teacher. You still need a paraprofessional. You still need to keep the lights on. You still need to keep the heat on. You still have all those expenses, whether it's a class of 25 or 21, the costs to this district are still the same. And I think that's really the scary part, is if it were to have been enacted, I think a lot of communities would have suffered as a result. And I just don't think that creates a better educational experience. I mean, in most cases, it's certain students that would be able to move on and others that would not. I know some people believe that it would provide a more equalizing force on education and allow students to pursue different curriculum in other places, but I really believe that school districts are local, and local people know what's best for their students. And people within the community, parents, have an opportunity to participate in that discussion with all of you. There aren't some here tonight, but I know they come to public participation.
Yes, they
And
do.
as I said, having served on a school board, I've been an alderman, I've served in the state senate. Constituent issues on the aldermanic board, the state senate level, people can get very emotional about issues, but nothing is more emotional to someone than the well-being and the education of their child.
Right.
And that's really, it's really what I think is motivating a lot of people to look at educational issues more, to get out and participate, hopefully in town meeting, scrutinize contracts, building projects, and moving forward to ensure that we're providing everything we can.
So you mentioned, as the reps did, as far as Keno being shifted away from kindergarten into building aid. Do you see building aid going up? I mean, aside from just Keno, the need for, because there are some buildings, you mentioned our schools are in good shape, but I mean, we have one that's quite old, our elementary school. And in years past that there was monies available that are no longer available. And as one of our reps said to us last time that, well, what's here today is not necessarily going to be here tomorrow. I understand that, but at the same time, there is a need. I'm sure it's not just this town that has a school in need of repair or new.
Not just repair, but also changes in class size. I mean, you might have seen that the city of Berlin is actually closing a school. They have 3 buildings. They're consolidating to 2. I do think the need and the inventory of projects that are shovel ready or design ready for school buildings is there. We did bond a significant portion of school building aid, and we are continuing to pay that off. I do think that moving the Keno funds, which are continuing to grow, to funding and helping to pay off the school building aid bond will give us more capacity to look at doing more projects like here in Litchfield and in other parts of the state. And I certainly would encourage and support that. I think the infrastructure needs are really important. On the one hand, we like to preserve the character and nature of some of our older buildings. On the other hand, students need to be able to perform in 21st century careers. So we need to have the wiring and the capability to make those ready for our students. So.
And if I may just clarify, as the new superintendent, I'm not opposed to old. Old can be still very functional.
Absolutely.
To me, the piece I see is, it's built in a floodplain. There's moisture coming up through the floor. We've got dehumidifiers running all day long. It's really a site that has just moved beyond what we're able to continue to maintain. And so, making sure, and then I'm looking for the partnership, so right now, without a lot of industry in Litchfield, it really is on a homeowner's tax base to do something with this school. We do have some businesses in town, but not many. And so getting into the state partnership piece of how do we make sure that we're providing the education that's necessary in the future. And so, I really do appreciate hearing that this is being looked at and looking for kind of an ongoing stream. That's really helpful to hear.
Yeah, I think the whole school funding debate is starting to ramp up again, as it did back in the early 2000s when we'd had the Claremont lawsuit and came up with the statewide property tax, and recognized that there are certain districts that had unique needs, whether it was a large population of English language learners or free and reduced lunch, whatever the weighting factors are. The original formula, I think, was probably in its purest form the best solution. But over each successive legislative session, we have continued to change the stabilization grants, put a collar so that there was a cap on what could go. Unfortunately, the issue has become one of the battle of the spreadsheets. So if you looked at the policy and what was the best thing to do for individual students, you'd probably do something like what was originally enacted back in 2007, 2008. But because of the way the dollars work and because of the property tax value in certain communities, we've ended up with different permutations and holds and stabilizations and stops and freezes. And it's kind of gotten out of whack from what it originally was supposed to do, which was to provide every child in the state of New Hampshire, regardless of where they live, with an adequate education. Now, how significant a change we're going to make, it's going to be a challenge. There's no doubt about it. But looking at other parts of school funding, like building aid and other supports, I think is more likely to occur in this budget cycle as we move forward. So
It's good to hear.
Yeah. Really informative. Thank you so much.
Does anyone have any other questions for Senator? Well, we appreciate your time.
oh,
Thank you so
my
much.
pleasure. I'm happy to be here, and I would be happy to come back, post-town meeting or in June when we hopefully wrap up the session, that we're all in agreement on a budget.
That'd be great.
But I do very, very much appreciate being here to speak with you, appreciate the work that you do, and certainly recognize serving on a school board is one of the toughest elective offices there is. So
Your job's not much
kudos to all
easier
of
either.
you.
So, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Excellent, thanks.
They said I should invite you to tour the schools.
I'd be happy to, anytime.
Excellent.
Great.
More than
Perfect.
happy to.
Do you want me to coordinate that with your office?
Yes,
That'd be great.
that would be great. Thanks again, Michelle.
Excellent.
It's like even,
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great things are happening in Litchfield schools, and I'm happy to learn even
They
more
are.
about what's going on.
Yeah, thank you.
Again.
Thanks. Good night.
That's nice.
Wow.
It's true.
All right. So we're back to you.
So just quickly, the NHSBA legislative update, you can see by this that things are really heating up with legislation, right? So your association has provided you with some talking points relative to various pieces of legislation. So I have to say, what I've appreciated between the reps coming here and now the senator is that they've all expressed an interest in hearing from us. And so I think as you look down this, we've been told that by the Superintendent's Association, I think the school boards would echo this, that when they hear directly from constituents, it really matters. It really influences. And so just believing that, oh, well, there's a bunch of stuff that's happening and they're going to do what they're going to do is really not the right approach. It's important that we take a look at this if we want to take a stance on something, that we let people know.
I agree. I just looked at my tax bill for the first time. And since we moved here 10 years ago, our taxes have gone up so much.
22 years.
And I'm not going to blame the schools. I'm not. It's
It is-
everything.
Well, and it's everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a problem that's exclusive to
No.
Litchfield. It's the nature of the beast.
The price you pay to live in a community like this.
Can I put you on the spot, Mike?
Sorry?
When I read this, can I put you on the spot?
Please, yeah.
Any update on the new safety measures? I haven't heard anything them rolling them out to the kids yet. Have they?
On Alice?
Yeah.
So let me share with the board that we have finally secured a date to meet. Corey and I need to meet with police and fire so that we can review some of the things that we learned from the Alice training and make sure that police and fire understand what we were taught to do.
Weren't they there?
No,
Well, the police were they were in the hallway. They didn't participate.
Oh, okay.
not so, and fire was not involved. Am I correct on that?
Aside from, OJ being a volunteer and being an employee of ours, but aside from that, I did not see.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
Did they go through the training or
And so,
police?
I'm sorry.
Did the police go through their own training for it? Or?
There's 2 or 3 officers in town that are Alice certified, and actually one of them did participate at LMS.
At
I think they
LMS.
did at GMS as well.
It just to me, this is like
But hearing the training, right, and then we sat with our administrative team and debriefed afterwards, and we were tasked with, all right, let's make sure police and fire are on the same page, because we were taught to do things that would violate a fire code, but you're also being taught to do things that violate a fire code in an emergency desperate situation. And so we really just need to make sure that we understand all of this before we start to roll stuff out with our staff. And so that's our next step. So it finally is happening. We've had a couple of starts and stops on it, and we'll keep at it. And then I think the next conversation for us is to what level of involvement do we want to have with students? And what would that look like? So
I wonder if parent information night might be a good idea, or some kind of a pamphlet or something that goes home to parents to say, you know, your child is going to be learning about this, this, and this. This is why. This is, you know, the training and, you know, how it's been vetted and successful. And I just think parents, as a parent, I would like to know as much about what you're telling my kids,
Yep.
And what they're preparing for and that kind of thing in general.
Have they not done any practice runs yet?
with kiddos?
Yeah.
Have not.
The ones we did, I think Corey knows in Hudson went very well. We've done them twice. And have you done practice runs? Yeah.
4 now. Yeah. But we had, I was just, our police officers rolled it out. Like, we didn't have training, you know, they rolled it out. They, you know,
No.
I just think it's so like a no brainer. As I said, since I've been teaching, I'm like, no, I'm not staying here. Something, you know, bringing the kids, getting them if possible. It just seems. Do they have the okay if something was to happen?
So
to
what,
do what's best for
what
the
we've
student?
communicated to our staff is they now have been trained. They have the green light to do
Okay.
what's necessary, right? It's a little bit of herding cats, but in terms of kids not knowing, but if they're being told do the following, I think kids are going to follow right along.
That just makes me happy. The staff's been told do what's best for the kids.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not a you have to do this.
We're talking about a situation that, you know, knock on wood, we never have to see, right? But if you have an active shooter in the building, the staff are empowered to do what they need to do. And so the old training of hunker down and
Lock the door and sit
lock the
down.
doors is not necessarily the way they're going to respond.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else on the legislative update piece? All right, so let me hit, there's a list of things. These should be relatively quick. So there was an inquiry from the board relative to ski club at LMS being dismissed and basically bringing school to a close. I had a conversation with Tom, the principal, and he's going to move that dismissal till afterwards. And this is one of those leftover things from when it was a school activity. Here's how they've always kind of done it. And when I raised the point that was raised here, he said, yeah, okay, we can do that. His big thing is getting the bus. He wants to dismiss at the same time, but have the ski bus lead its way up 3A. So it's not stopping behind every bus stop. And I said, you can make that happen. It'll all come together.
So Can you do this-
Can you do the same thing for me when I drive up Hillcrest?
Oh, I don't even take Albuquerque in
Yeah.
the morning anymore to drop Tony off because I'm stuck in. So instead of having the ski club's kids leave earlier, they're going to be dismissed with everybody
Right.
else, but they're just going to get on their bus.
Right on their bus, and their bus will pull out and be on its way. So there's no need to, the time at LMS is tight to begin with. And so dismissing even a few minutes early, the problem is it brings closure to the day. When a quarter of the kids are participating in ski club,
Right.
you can't dismiss them and expect life is carrying on. And so we're gonna make sure that we make that adjustment.
I do have concerns about the rest of the buses being behind the ski bus just because they're on a schedule. They have to go, they have to do their runs. They have to pick up the GMS kids.
Well, they're not really, they're
He's talking
not,
about having a ski bus in front of the school
Yeah,
buses.
okay. Now that I said it out loud,
Yeah,
it's silly.
because
All right,
it'll just go right up 3A and,
Yeah.
and
I
they'll
think
start making
you
the
just wait,
stops, yeah.
give the ski kids 5 minutes later, and they're not going to worry about a bus.
Mhm.
Or once they get
You
up,
want them to be behind the buses?
I don't care where they are. I don't care where the ski bus is. It's going to get to the mountain eventually. There are cars behind the buses.
Hmm.
I just don't want to see the kids get out 5 minutes early or 10 minutes early and disrupt the class.
And
And
that
the
one we've
class.
done. That one we've done.
Yeah.
Yep.
As far as the bus, I don't really care what you do with the bus.
Oh, well, I do.
Well, Michael might. I'm going to have my son write you a letter.
So the next thing is the GMS special assisting out in kindergarten. So had a conversation with Scott. He's taking a look at that. If you look at the schedule at GMS, it is a moving target of when this time would be available. But there is a window of time where, again, it's a moving target of when these pieces would fit. And he's going to see if there's any way that they can do some assistance. But it may be one of those, because it's so hit or miss, and the way it rotates through with somebody different every single day, it may end up being not helpful in the long run
I
to
personally
a kindergarten teacher.
don't want to see a reading tutor doing recess duty. I do not want to, I think that's wrong on so many different levels. That we're paying them to be with kids, not to stand
I'm not
outside.
talking about reading tutors right now.
Well, they're doing recess duty too. But specialists, they don't, they're teachers though, they shouldn't have.
We're not talking about them doing recess duty. We're talking about utilizing
Oh,
specials to go help the kindergarten where we have class sizes of 21 and 22.
oh,
Right.
sorry.
So the time that they have available, which they do have some extra time, rather than them doing nothing or doing something outside of teaching to go help the kindergarten teachers.
You think it's a moving part? It kind of looks like right in the middle that they do have time, the teachers. I'm back on your page.
The moving part is that it would be somebody on Monday, somebody on Tuesday, somebody on Wednesday. So if you're the teacher and you've got somebody different every day,
I bet they could utilize them in different, I'm sure if you
Yep.
ask the kindergarten teachers, hey, I can send you the music teacher for an hour on Thursday. Fantastic, send her over.
Yeah.
Or however the
They'll be
schedule
like
is.
enrichment too, if they did something there.
I don't think you'd necessarily use that
Just another
as,
set of hands.
but also remember it's one person with an hour, 4 different classrooms. So when you really start to examine what that looks like, it seems like, oh, this can be helpful, and we just need to make sure that it's really helpful and not just I'm picking so and so up for 15 minutes. And it's a different so-and-so, every day kind of thing. So we'll work at it, but
I'm sure Scott will talk with the kindergarten teachers. I'm sure they'll give the
Absolutely.
input, so.
Yep. Absolutely. Days versus hours with other districts. I think we hit that in the calendar piece, unless there are other things. So really, I just need to get back to you on what can we do hours based, right? So, and we'll have that dialogue also with LEA. Quick update for the board. You heard there was a frozen pipe in the vintage portable at GMS, and that was a result of heat tape that failed. And so they discovered it as soon as they got in yesterday morning, replaced the heat tape. It thawed the pipe out. There was no damage from the fact that it had frozen, so we're good to go. But, I want to share with the board, I sent an email to the staff this morning, just thanking them for sort of pitching in. I mean, this resulted in a domino of space needs over there, right? So the pre-K came into a kindergarten classroom got divided up. And then we had afternoon pre-K that got placed in the learning commons. So the librarian had to go and instruct in the classroom and not in the library. And so everybody was just sort of jumping on board. And I reminded them that, sometimes when there's a tear in the fabric, you get stressed about it, right? But you get a professional tailor who comes in and can seam that back together. And you end up with really kind of a pretty nice piece of fabric that's put all back together when professionals know how to do that. I couldn't do that. And that's what they did yesterday as a staff, right? It's through teamwork and paying attention. They were able to stitch it all back together again and end up in a good spot. So I wanted them to know how much we appreciated that, because, there was an early request to cancel afternoon pre-K. And I'm like, no, those parents are counting on pre-K. We need to have pre-K and just find out how to accommodate. And so how can we do it? And we rolled our sleeves up and got it done. So it is good that we were able to get that
There's
accomplished.
probably no other means to keep the pipes, I would think, thawed, aside from that kind of tape. But if I'm not mistaken, the same thing happened last year or the year before, that it failed. So I don't know if there is a different, I didn't think me was probably
Absolutely
not.
look into it.
But check with Dave. I'm almost certain to decide that happened last year or the year before too, that it failed.
With extreme cold.
Yeah. No, I know. But it failed, so
Yeah.
you had to replace it with something new. So I don't know if it's just the life expectancy of this material. Is it just like a year and it has to be replaced, or
Okay.
does it go on forever and just it's hit or miss? I don't
Yeah,
know.
because that may be just routine maintenance to replace the heat tape,
Yeah.
right? So that's a good call. We could schedule that. And then the last thing is the no delay day yesterday. So I just want to share with the board and the public, spent a ton of time communicating with other superintendents on Monday night, kind of taking a look at the weather, communicating with our staff to make sure that we knew what the best options were. It was about a 4-hour process. So anybody who thinks that we were just ignoring it, that's not the case. There was about a 4-hour process that led us to a decision not to do a delay. And when we examined it, if you looked at the weather forecast, the temperature was going to rise. It was predicted to rise 3 to 5 degrees in the 2 hours. The wind was staying just as steady. It's not like the wind was disappearing. So in my assessment of it, there was really going to be no benefit that was gained. And in fact, we were going to inconvenience all our parents who then had to scramble and figure out what to do with kiddos in order to make all this work. So I didn't see that there was any benefit that was going to come from the delay, and we decided to stay the course. We had a commitment from our bus people that they were going to be able to deliver routes on time. That's not the commitment other superintendents had. There was concern about being able to get the buses run. So other districts made a different decision. But when we weighed it all out, really, we were able to open on time. We did end up with 2 buses that were running about 10 minutes behind, but that happens on a sunny day. So it didn't feel like that was necessarily a factor that we needed to weigh in on. So that's why we decided to do.
The 2 buses, I mean, when you have all these kids waiting in cars, that adds a minute or 2 that they're not waiting outside too.
So that was why we made the decision, and I think it was the right decision for Litchfield. We've had very little feedback on it. I've reminded people who, a few people have judged other districts and said they thought their call was unnecessary. And I said, well, talking to one superintendent in a city where you've got to think about sidewalks being plowed, lots of walkers. So you're in that kind of cold and walking a mile. That's a different look than what we have in Litchfield. And so, again, it needs to be a local decision. I think we made the right one. And in hindsight, I would do it again, the way we did it.
I was going to comment on that in school board comments, but where you already brought it up, it did. I mean, I looked at the weather. I mean, I touched base with you. I mean, the variance of weather from those 2 hours was 6 degrees. It was still -6. And, the amount of time they spend at the sidewalk waiting for the bus isn't really that much time. It was cold. That's for certain. But I'm glad we didn't have a delayed opening. It was school as normal and just
Finals,
continue on.
the midterms weren't affected at all. That would have been bumpy.
Yeah. That was the other thing too that you have to take into consideration. So, I think if driving, if the roads are undrivable, like you said, we don't have kids that really walk to school, not that many anyway. And I think the ones who did, they get driven at least to LMS, because I know the drop off at LMS is about 5 times as much as more than 5 times. It was a lot of drop offs.
He was almost late for his finals. They were dropping off Michael,
Oh,
and they were almost late for their finals because they had to wait on the LMS line.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure the public understands that it's a process. It's not a
Well,
a
I
quick
think
decision.
Yeah, I
So,
think you touched on. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts as far as making that kind of decision. You talk with the road agent, you talk with the bus company. I know you talk with Corey, who's right here local. So it's a lot, and it's not an easy decision to make one way or the other.
all right.
So community forum, we have no one in the community here, so we'll just school board comments.
I'm sorry I brought up the recess thing.
You what?
I'm sorry I brought up the recess thing.
That's all right.
I'll bring it up later.
We'll bring it now. School board comments.
It's been brought to my attention that that some of our reading tutors are doing recess duty. Is that true?
I'm going to check into that.
And I don't know, I haven't been to GMS in a while. So they had 4 lunches, then he went to 5 lunches and recesses, and now he's back to 4. This is all secondhand information.
It is at 4.
He's at 4.
Yeah.
And how many monitors do they need?
We'd have to check the
Is there a
staff.
ratio they need for monitors
He has a number that he uses.
that he uses or the state uses or?
Oh, I don't think it's a state number. I could be wrong.
Because I know when our kids were there, I know Jamie was with a big class. They only had 3 monitors out there. I just think we hire a reading tutor to be a reading tutor, not to be a recess monitor. And I don't know if it's true or not. I just don't agree with that at all.
I think it's based on the number of monitors is based on the number of kids within those those groups. So in order to go back to 4 lunches and 4 recesses, they split the kindergartens and put them with grade 1 and grade 2. So those are larger groups. So and at those age groups, you're going to need extra help.
body in 1 and 2.
Anyone else have anything?
I'm not done.
What?
I have one more comment. And is there a reason why we don't have an administrator out at recess? We have administrators out at our recess in middle school. Do you have administrators out at now? Do you have recess at your school?
Teachers cover it.
Teachers cover it?
Teachers cover it. Yeah.
We always have an administrator. And even when I was in Merrimack, we had an administrator. We had quadrants. They know the kids the best. They can monitor. That's just my thought, that why don't we have an administrator out at recess? I know Bo Schlichter used to go out to recess.
So out of curiosity, you don't think the administrator's time is be more valuable not at recess?
No,
I
I
do.
think
I do.
It's 2 hours a day.
they could take turns. They can get to know the kids. They can watch behaviors on the playground. That's just my thought. That's where a lot of things happen.
Maybe that's what the reading tutor was doing.
No, that's not their job. To watch 125 kids. Or however many kids. I'm just making it up. You don't have to agree. That's my opinion. Oh my God, you're so popular.
That's my family.
Okay, I'm done now.
All right. So we have minutes from January 9th, 2019 for approval. Is there a motion to approve?
Did you see my notes? My comments?
What's that?
I made
Where?
comments, but I don't know if I ever shared them.
Where?
I didn't get it.
Oh, okay.
On the draft?
Yeah. We didn't start in the auditorium. We started in the media room.
Oh, we did start in the auditorium, but then we moved.
The first public session was not held in the CHS auditorium.
No, I know.
Okay,
That was my fault.
That was my
Yeah.
one of my notes. But I think that was it.
That was my fault. I knew about that.
That was the budget committee, wasn't it?
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the draft minutes from January 9th.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Abstained. Next, we have budget transfers. You have a lot of them, huh?
Looks like that's 4
Well,
periods.
we had to go back to
Yeah.
November.
Yeah, back to November.
Make a motion to approve the budget transfers.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. That'll bring us to your report.
Right. So in the written report, in the first section, I put a budget update for FY20, went through the actions that the budget committee took during the January 10th budget hearing. You'll see those on the warrant as well. We had 4 of our articles were recommended. One was not, being the CBA with the LEA. There's 2 non-monetary articles on the warrant, the naming of the high school auditorium and the petition warrant article for the tax cap, which will be included. Within the team drive, there's a draft of the MS-27 for your review to see. That'll be posted with the warrant so people can see the detail. The warrant and the default budget are also provided, so those can be signed tonight because the posting is due by January 28th. The Public Infrastructure Fund. So funds from that, we did get approval for the 2 projects, one at LMS and one at CHS. The money has to be spent or an extension filed for by April 1st. So for the 2 projects, the project at CHS, which would redo the entryway, I foresee we could get that done during the summer, but I'll have to put in the extension to make sure that we have the money. The canopy, reached out to the state today. They had approved that up to $100,000. All the projects in this round for approval were capped at $100,000. That was the highest amount they were going to give for any project within this round. So The extension goes through December of 2020. So I'll file for the extension for this money, and then we have time to
What
go
is
through and see.
what was the overall cost?
317, I
Okay.
believe, is what we put in for the
So it
application.
would cover about a third of it.
We are working on finishing up the project at GMS for the vestibule there. The two pieces remaining are the film on the exterior windows and the main entrance signage, which was suggested by the Homeland Security report. I did put a picture in the drive of what the sign would look like. It was very simple sign to go forward, and that was included in the grant application, so we will get funding for that.
Is it gonna have tiger stripes?
No, but it will be, I believe it's orange.
Thank you.
Let's see. Just to go through some of the other things going on, the modular project for the kindergarten, we're coming up on the close of that. We did put last weekend exterior lighting on the portable, so you can see better angles outside. Once that invoice is paid, I can do the final accounting of the project and bring that to the board to see.
And I don't have a meeting for
It's
a month, but will the fence, I know they're gonna ask about the fence.
The fence, there's nothing I can really do about the fence. We have the funds for the fence, but we have to have a meeting with the fencing company in the spring when the ground thaws. So
By the end of the year still?
by the end of the year, it will be done. Received draft financials from Plotzik and Sanderson. We had an unqualified opinion, so a clean opinion on our financial statements. I have asked the director in charge of our audit to give us a proposal for a 3-year engagement. We have a really good relationship with this audit firm. For what other firms would charge us, it's reasonable, and the cost would be higher to bring in somebody new. And then I did provide in the team drive, I provided year-to-date financials. So other than that, if anyone has any questions of me?
Is the first picture the one you went with, item A?
Yeah, option A,
Cheap one.
the cheapest of the three. Yes.
It needs a name. Right?
Yeah.
It looks nice.
Name and main entrance.
So
I like it.
I just have a question and something I was thinking about, because we do it, and we're talking about safety right now, but for the fire department and for the police department, we have numbers outside for all the doors.
Mhm.
Why don't we number the inside of the doors? I
What do
was
you
thinking,
mean? The numbers are
every
outside
door
the
is numbered. So if the fire department gets there, they know to go to door 1. But how do they know to get to door 1?
Oh, I don't know.
So I was thinking, like, why don't we number the inside of the doors?
I mean, we labeled the windows.
To provide a schematic.
We
Fire
labeled the
department
windows.
of all the numbered doors on the
That's all,
exterior.
and that's all exterior.
Right.
So if a student or if a teacher is inside and they're at door 24, that they can notify the police department or the fire department.
Oh, you mean the number of the classroom itself?
No, the door. The door.
That's a good point.
All the exterior doors are numbered.
The windows are supposed to be numbered so that they know.
Right, but for the people inside don't know what those numbers are.
Actually, you could see them. Transparent.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could, I mean, you have to switch it around, but you can.
Any good first grade
Right, but
teacher can
that's
read
a-
upside down.
right,
and
but
know
That's
where
right.
it's
That's
at.
right.
But that's a
the-
classroom,
But
not
the
a-
doors are solid. You're making a really good point,
Yeah.
Brian. I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, that needs a number 2.
I mean, it's cheap enough, right, to get some decals up there. That's all you need.
Oh, I'm
Is that what the
thinking
big number
could be on
11
paper
is on
even.
the main entrance? On one of the brick posts
not
up
right.
front, there's a
If you-
huge sign that
Yeah.
just says 11 on it.
It's all the way around the building. At
Okay.
CHS?
Yeah.
All the way
We're
around the
not
building
there.
is all the numbers like that.
Yeah.
That's, so like the first responders go and they know like what door to go
Right.
to. But I'm not sure how they know what door to go to if,
The person on the inside doesn't know which door it is.
Right.
It's a good point.
it's the little things.
Check that out. And that can be just a piece of paper. That's cheap.
Put in a little sleeve
Or
or something.
3A.
Did we number all of our all of our windows on the outside?
I believe they
Windows
are.
are numbered, and you can see the number from inside.
Right.
You have to transpose it, but you can see it. So,
That's for classroom number.
Yep.
All right. we are on to warrant articles.
There is a sheet on the front and a sheet behind the warrant articles for you to sign.
Can we talk a little bit about the petition? I'm familiar with the articles that we wrote because we wrote them, but the petition warrant article, can we discuss a little bit of what that means for
Sure.
us as a school board?
How if we make,
And,
how if there's a motion first? I'll make the motion
Oh.
to not recommend Article 7.
well, that's why I want to discuss it before we, oh, you want the motion first? Okay.
I second.
Discussion?
Yes. So it's kind of vague, as warrant
That's
articles
More than vague, but.
typically are. But I want to have a good idea of what it means for us. Shall not submit a recommended budget that increases the amount to be raised by local taxes by a certain dollar amount or percentage. Is that determined by the
Yes.
school district? Okay.
Why does it say could?
Why don't we put 20%?
What's that?
Why does this, I didn't understand why it says which could implement a tax.
Well,
Right.
let's put it this way. The article is vague.
Yeah.
It's kind of like out there. It's like language that
Mhm.
nobody seems to understand. So let's just talk about what the potential is for a tax cap.
Yeah.
And what the ramifications would be if we had a tax cap.
Mhm.
We're not as fortunate as the town, number one. They have a tax cap of what, 2%, 2.5%?
Not sure.
It's a set dollar amount.
What's that?
I think it's a set dollar amount, but
Right. But
it
I
can't
think it's-
increase by
160,000 or
X
something.
number of
Yeah,
dollars.
yeah.
But because their revenues keep increasing,
Mhm.
their budget's gone up $1 million in 3 years. So the school district wouldn't have that flexibility. So let's say there's a tax cap, and we'll just throw a number out there. We'll say, I don't want to give any ideas to anyone, so, but we'll use 1%, okay? So let's say we had a tax cap of 1%, so we couldn't exceed in any given year. Well, the budget committee could not
Recommend.
recommend anything over, say like this year, $220,000. So, and that includes, doesn't that include salaries and benefits also? Because it would increase, right? So right off the gun, you would have to like start laying t-shirts off.
Mhm.
That your budget is only 1%. So let's say now we have a budget for 1920. Now you have a child comes in with special needs. And it's an expensive one. So there's $175,000. You can't budget for it because you can't put it in the budget. So you have to start making cuts. So what do? You start eliminating sports. You start eliminating, you're worried about your reading tutor being out there in recess? Gone. Math tutor? Gone. I mean, that's where you start cutting. Then you start taking class sizes from 16, 18, 20. Now your class size is going to start being 25, 26, 27, 28 kids. If you want to know what a tax cap would do, and I'm certain Dr. Jetty can speak of it, visit a couple of places that have it. Go to Dover and see what their schools are like right now.
Laconia.
What's that?
Laconia.
Laconia. I mean, it ties your hands. You forget it. You don't even have a budget. You just, here you go. But what it means also is like, then you can have like 40 warrant articles. That's what the town does. They just have additional warrant articles. They can't put any more money, so they just have more warrant articles. Once the warrant article passes, then it envelopes into their budget.
Who determines the tax cap then?
The town presented it.
But, well, that was my question about it, which
Oh,
could.
this right here?
Yeah,
No,
I
I'm
just-
saying that the town developed their own and they presented to the budget committee.
So the budget committee would decide on what the tax cap would be?
No,
Or
they
would we?
decided for themselves and presented to the
Selectmen
budget committee.
decided what the tax cap would be on. the
This
town
doesn't have
budget.
anything to do with the town.
So the school board would
Okay.
decide.
This was not the budget
Well,
committee.
and my other concern too is, like we said, if we level funded our budget this year, we didn't raise anything.
Mhm.
It still goes up. Was it 2%?
oh,
The
taxes.
tax impact.
So our appropriation budget was up 0.95%.
Yeah.
So we're below 1%.
Right.
And then the tax, I believe the tax rate was going still 4 to 5 because of the revenue shift.
Right. So it doesn't have an effect on what the tax rate. We would just have a. I guess I'm
So we'd have to look at
Well,
the
it could,
calculations.
it
of
could have
tax
an
cap.
effect on the tax rate
Mhm.
if we present a budget and then we know what our needs are
Mhm.
and it exceeds what the tax cap is, then we can't do that.
Then the budget committee has to cut it down below the tax
Right.
cap.
Did the public vote on the tax cap for the town?
Yes. But the town is a different animal altogether. I mean, they have revenues that offset. They have a tax cap. Let's say it's 160,000. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Something like that?
somewhere.
Or 175,000. So they can't present a budget that's over 175,000 from the prior year.
Increase.
Yeah.
But it's all built in with revenues also.
Right.
So, I mean, that's, if they only go up 175,000, well, they're up over $1 million in 3 years.
People
that's how they-
just see tax cap and they think they're gonna save money.
That includes articles too.
Mhm.
Right.
Wow.
I think
But
the issue is
article-
we.
The petition article is not asking if they want a tax cap. It's only asking if they want an article brought forward.
Right.
Mm.
My concern is that we are legally obligated to provide an adequate education for our students and safe buildings for them to go to school in and special services for students who need them. And I think as this year's budget has shown, it's gone up 0.95%. And it's a lean budget. I mean, we've cut what we can cut and we return every penny that isn't spent to offset the tax impact the next year. I fear that if we're going to be operating under a deficit and have to have extra special meetings and, appeals with the state if we have to operate within those parameters.
Keep in mind, we're at a lean budget right now at 0.95.
Yeah.
So any of our articles, the other articles, the budget committee couldn't even vote on. They wouldn't
Right.
vote on it.
Right, they wouldn't be recommended, whether we
Right.
need them or not.
Yep.
We have to vote whether or not to recommend the article.
Not recommend.
To recommend.
I
it
said
not.
whether or not recommend, right?
What's that?
Yes.
Now, just to
you're-
clarify, a warrant passing would increase the tax cap for the next year,
Correct.
correct?
People at
Yep.
deliberative are the only ones, people at deliberative, are the only ones that can override the tax cap. If they vote to
Correct.
send the article
Yep.
to the ballot. Yeah.
This is a petitioned article. In the past, we've had other petitioned articles that were advisory only. Is this one of those?
All petition articles are advisory.
Advisory only. Okay,
I-
so it's not legally binding.
No, if you read this is really a feeler
Mhm.
to see if people in the town want the school board to come forward with a tax cap on themselves next year.
Mhm.
So it really is just a feeler warrant. The wording is not straight out of the RSA and it's only advisory. So
Okay.
it's just asking, it could have
But it's something to be
been,
concerned with down the road.
it could have
Well-
been a petition warrant to using the RSA and using the language to impose a tax cap, and it's not.
I
It's a
understand.
feeler.
Yeah. I understand the desire behind this to keep our taxes from increasing at an astronomical. But I also think the school board members also feel that we all live in town, we all pay our taxes, we all get our tax bills the same time everyone else is. And we have striven in the past, as long as I've been on the board, which granted has only been 2 years, but 3 years. We understand that need and our budget this year reflects that. I mean, it's extremely lean. It's increase of only less than 1%. So I don't feel like it's necessary. I feel like we know we have a responsibility to our taxpayers. We understand that responsibility, and I think we're delivering on it.
I think we're financially responsible myself.
I do too.
What's unfortunate too, there are a lot of people out there just from seeing different little tidbits here and there that go after the school district because our budget is so big.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And look at the town, it's only this, and the school board, the school is this. That's in any municipality there is. I mean, the schools are going to be your biggest budget. That's just the cost of education.
Mhm.
operating a town doesn't cost as much as it does operating a school district. That's really what it comes down to. And if you look at what our budgets have increased, and if you want to compare it to the town, because people have, I mean, our budgets haven't gone up 33% as the town has in 3 years. I wish it had. I mean, we could be a fantastic education we give to everyone. I mean, be having one-on-one with students, but that's not the case, and that's not what we're after. We're after giving the students the best education possible at the lowest cost to the taxpayers. Senator Susie said it herself. It's the list of colleges that our students go on to. The entire town should feel very comfortable about that the education we're providing as a district, we're putting out there some excellent young men and women to go on to schools and do better things.
Right. And like you said, we could have a tax cap and we could lower our budget. We could cut our budget by a quarter. But at what cost to the students?
Well, and then keep in mind too, that, I mean, when you start doing that in schools, that the people that are moving in right now are going to move out.
Well, that's the thing. The schools are our biggest draw in
Yeah.
Litchfield.
And kindergarten's a big draw, I think, right now, and we're starting to see an influx of younger people coming into town. And I can tell you now, with a tax cap and the burden it would put on the schools, you would start seeing people in droves leaving.
We wouldn't be able to provide the programming that we provide.
And you start seeing your house is worth less than what, they value, what you owe on them.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All right. So all those in favor of not recommending Article 7, signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Abstain. 040.
Michelle, can I just clarify, because I want to make sure I've got this right, because we have a motion in the negative. So what will the wording be? Recommended by the school board, or will it say not
We'll say
recommended?
not recommended by the
04.
school board.
Okay, so the way the motion was
Yeah.
made.
We asked the DRA about that 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So if we look at Article 2, it says not recommended by the budget committee because of a tied vote.
Right.
This will say not recommended by the school board 4-0.
040.
040.
Yeah, 0-4-0. Right. Got it. Thank you. I just want to make sure I got
Yep.
that.
Okay, so I will fix that page. I will amend that page, but we need you guys.
So can I ask about Article 6?
Sign this. Oh, yeah. Article 6.
So after the school board motion, we sent it off to Diane Burrow to review.
Yep.
And she came back with this language as, this is what, you got to keep this simple. It's just
Yep. But we never, but my point is we never voted on this article.
We voted to add the article, but we didn't vote to
Correct.
recommend it. Right.
Isn't that correct, Michelle?
I believe.
How we voted
No,
on
you
it.
voted with 2 motions. One to add it
Agree?
and then one to recommend.
You did not vote on that actual language, but
No.
the
No, not
spirit,
on that
the
actual
spirit
language.
of what you voted on
Okay.
is
Right.
reflected in.
All right, so do we need to re-vote it? I guess is what I'm asking.
I guess that would be up to the board.
Well, I know we did it just as verbiage to get it in place.
Right.
Right.
I guess my only concern, if we re-vote, there's only 4 of us here
Ours
tonight.
not.
that
Well,
changes.
no, I would suggest, I mean, we could do that. I wouldn't do it, but we could, and it would fail. But it's already been expressed as far as the majority of the board is in favor of this. So I think it's only right that all of us would be there to vote. But I'm just wondering if we need to re-vote on this where we didn't have this as written.
I suppose you could if you wanted to. I don't think I've ever had that happen.
I thought we did.
Michelle, let's talk our timelines for a second.
We have to post by the latest, the 28th.
Monday.
Otherwise, we're in violation.
Well, it's up to you.
We voted before at deliberative, get the words out.
You can revote at deliberative.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can.
But how do we reopen the vote? Is somebody who voted in the negative has to reopen it? Is that right?
Somebody who voted in the positive has to
Oh, okay.
reopen.
Would you like me to reopen?
I think,
Deliberative?
I think just, I'm just thinking legally because we didn't vote on that verbiage.
Mhm.
So I take it then by the 20th, since you brought up the date, that are we going to have information as far as a bus contract?
I believe so.
Do you believe so?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
'Cause I think that's going to be a piece at deliberative session.
Oh,
We'll have it by deliberative session. I don't think we're going to have it.
but he said he's, I don't know.
So someone will need to make a motion at deliberative to change the budget.
And we can't do that, right?
Yes,
We
Oh,
can
we
Yeah.
can do it.
we did
Yeah.
it last year with the kindergarten warrant article.
Well, I
Do it.
for some reason I thought we couldn't. I thought-
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yep.
Were you in the meeting afterwards?
Oh, yeah, I remember it. Mike was there.
Yeah,
You missed the show.
I think those film. All right.
You know, now that I look at my notes,
Mhm.
I did not vote on a recommendation on the item.
That's
That's what I
correct.
thought.
You're absolutely right. I
So-
stand corrected.
So right now, there shouldn't be any vote numbers in there.
There should not be a vote number.
All right.
Are you going to call for a vote?
If I call for a vote right now, it'll fail.
I know.
So I'm thinking we wait until we're at deliberative and we'll do the vote,
Okay.
unless you want to fail.
You know I don't. You know I will recommend it. I'm just, you're the chair.
And that's why I think it's with the integrity of the board and the fact that the board wanted it by a majority.
Mhm.
I think it's only right that we vote with the entire board here.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
All right.
Can I just ask something related to that? When we were in for lunch the other day, I guess I'm confused. There's a plaque up
Mhm.
outside the auditorium.
Mhm.
Is that part of this? Is that,
Well, that's where it would go up as a plaque.
no, there is a plaque.
Oh, no, there is.
Say.
It's just a
It's
picture
picture
of
of
Phil.
Phil. It's,
That brass.
But I guess my question,
well,
to
that's
me,
where it would end up
that's,
being.
when I saw it right away, I was thinking, is it dedicated? It just seemed just seemed odd to me that there was a plaque there. Cause that to me implied it was dedicated, even though it didn't say it. So it was kind of,
I haven't been in there.
Right. And
since.
basically, nothing's going to change as far
I
as.
understand. It just seemed odd to me that,
No, but I mean, that's
Yeah, right.
all it is. We're going to say, okay, it's the Phil Martin auditorium, but I mean, that's it. And you just go on.
but I guess the question when the policy, if it takes effect, to me, that plaque.
No,
we're just
I
gonna
would
put plaques
assume
up
they're gonna have
anyways.
letters. to
Well, no,
say
but I'm just
Phil.
saying,
What do you mean
I think it's a remembrance. That's what we approved, wasn't it? Were you at we were at the
The concert?
concert. That brass
plaque outside.
plaque,
Yeah.
that is now mounted in the wall.
Oh, I didn't know it was going to be mounted.
Yeah.
Well, I
That's
guess,
what would go in that place anyway.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
a plaque.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll just change the verbiage on the bottom.
Okay.
If you read
Yeah.
It's lovely.
that paragraph, I think or maybe not.
Oh,
Do we have to sign these? Is that what-
Yeah, we need signatures on this warrant
Well,
sheet. So here's
that's
one
the sheet we
to
usually have
sign.
them sign. That's the one I usually have them sign. This is something new.
Do I have to sign those, Liz?
Yeah, right.
You guys,
Yeah, she's not done yet.
Signed. I know some of them. I served in the test only before. True test. Oh, the testing when it was posted. Okay. They'll get it as soon as it's signed anyway.
Was that it? Just that one?
Yeah.
Michelle?
sorry.
All right. That'll bring us any questions on the manifest? Your signatures?
Not yet.
Don't forget, you have to sign the default budget as well.
Is it?
I'm not sure if there's one or two.
Hold on.
Just one.
This one.
Okay.
I'm kind of aware of this thing.
What do we do about Kara? Do we just leave it blank?
She can come in and sign
Sign
it.
later. This is just so we can post it.
Oh, there's two.
Once those are posted, can you let me know so I can share? Are those going up on the
Site, the website.
When I publicly post it and send it to you.
Perfect. Yeah, people have been asking Facebook. And will we have a draft of the contract, or can I post that for the public to review at some point?
Tell me what we customarily do. So
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Barbara has the agreement language,
Okay.
and she's starting to work on the contract. But my understanding is it was only
It hasn't been
something we
signed.
did after the fact. So it's a
Has it been
Is our-
signed?
it hasn't been signed yet.
Then it can't be posted.
What is it?
Signed by who?
Teacher contract.
Teachers and school board.
When are we gonna do that?
Yeah.
It's signed
After the vote.
after the vote.
Oh.
There's two here, Rob.
So we're just
This is the
providing
front
the
page for
facts
this
about
one,
the
so-
contract, but not the actual
Correct.
contract language?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, they're signed as tentative, but
Right.
but they're not. It's not the full agreement. It's just we're going to replace this with this, this with this,
Right,
and
right.
you know, if you
Right.
handed that to a member of the public, it'd be like
What?
it's so out of context.
Exactly.
Even those of us working on
It's
it, it's out of
confusing,
Yeah,
context.
yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
All right. Rob signing that. So community forum, again, no one's in the community here. You going to non-public? RSA 91-A:31-1. Dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee or disciplining of such employee or the investigation of any charges against him, unless the employee affected, one, has a right to a meeting, or two, requests that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. B, the hiring of any person as a public employee, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the body or agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
or non-public.
Shut up, Mama.